Now, Mike, I take you as a Coors Light, Miller Lite, Bud Light kind of guy. Am I right about that?
That would be correct. I leave the other stuff to the younger people I know.
Well, am I considered a younger people?
To me, you are. So consider yourself lucky.
All right, 44, and I'm younger people. I like that.
There you go.
All right, so we got so much to get into today. Obviously, yesterday. So give me how you interpret Ben Simmons and his team meeting with the 76ers. He has a contract. He's not up for an extension. So why would two teams randomly meet at the end of the season when his contract obligations are not close to being finished and they don't need to extend him?
Well, I think it's simple. I think everybody is trying to put their best face forward as far as maximizing his trade value. And obviously the Sixers, by committing to Ben Simmons and saying, hey, we want to work with Simmons, we think he can be improved, they're saying to the NBA, we're not going to give him away. And the Simmons people, by meeting with the Sixers, are kind of, if you're another NBA team, you don't want to hear that Ben Simmons doesn't think he has any issues or has nothing to work on. So the Simmons people coming to the Sixers saying, hey, we recognize we got to improve. What can we do? They're putting their best foot forward too. So I think this is all about everybody kind of putting on a show for the rest of the league, trying to get his trade value as high as possible.
So, I mean, they say no trade request was made here. So is that suggesting that Rich Paul and Ben Simmons are on board with whatever plan the Sixers have? Because I can't imagine the Sixers are saying, let's put this out there. We want you to come back, and you can go do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, look, no reporting involved here, but I find it hard to believe if Ben Simmons' management people, the people from Clutch Management and the power that they wield around the NBA, that's LeBron James's agency basically, are not going to engage the Sixers in, hey, Ben would like to go to a couple of these teams. These talks, despite what people are saying publicly, I would find it hard to believe if these behind the scenes, both parties are not discussing a move that would be beneficial to both Ben Simmons and the Philadelphia 76ers.
All right, so when you are, I know you're a happily married man there, Mike, but if you were not, you would probably be in a situation where your wife might say, hey, we need to go get some counseling. We need to talk about this. That usually doesn't work very well. I have somebody in my family who's pretty good at that lawyer thing, When you go to mediation, that doesn't work. So isn't this the first step of the divorce? You mediate here to say we have a problem?
Well, I think it's beyond that. I think it's at the point where the Sixers are going to move them and the two sides are going to go their separate ways. I just think it doesn't work. It didn't work in 2019. It didn't work. Last season he was hurt, but it wouldn't have worked against the Boston Celtics in last year's series, and it's not going to work. And it didn't work against the Atlanta Hawks. Ben Simmons does things, his defense, his ability in transition, his ability to pass the basketball. He does things that make him a talented player, and I think he can be part of a winning NBA team. It just doesn't work here because of Joel Embiid. He just does not complement Joel Embiid. The Sixers need somebody who can create off the dribble from the perimeter in the closing minutes of a fourth quarter playoff game. They don't have that player on the roster right now. And the best way to get that player is to trade Ben Simmons.
Hypothetically, if Tyrese Maxey develops and turns into a 12 to 15 point a game guy, handles the ball, could he play off the ball and utilizing him with a Maxey?
Yeah. Daryl Morey said during his end of the year press conference, he said when the question was asked, he said, we have that guy. We think we have those guys on the roster now. And obviously he's referring to Maxey. I just think a couple things. One, Embiid's 27 years old. He's going to be 28, 29. So you have a window with him that's open next year. And I agree with you. I think Maxey has shown that ability, but I think it's asking an awful lot of Tyrese Maxey in his second year to be a guy who says, okay, in the second round of the NBA playoffs, you're going to play 38 minutes a game and you're going to have the ball in your hands in the fourth quarter and you're going to create shots for us. I think that's a big ask for Tyrese Maxey. Maybe he does it 4 or 5 years from now. But by that point, the window's shut. So I think you've got to make every decision with one thought in mind. How are we going to increase Joel Embiid's odds of helping us win a championship next year? That's what should drive every decision the Sixers make.
Yeah, I agree. The whole Maxey thing, you're putting a lot of pressure on a second-year kid to come in. I will say, and you can maybe expand on this, is he does seem to be a fearless kid. Like if he got 82 games of starter minutes or regular minutes instead of the way they handled him this year, maybe he would. He seems like he's a little bit wise behind his years.
Yeah, he is fearless. He does play with a sort of swagger about him, I guess is the best way to put it. But again, as we have seen, 82 regular season games is not 16 playoff games. It's not the way the defense is in the second round of the playoffs. I still think it's a big lift for him, to go into the playoffs next year. Now, if you gave him the ball next year and he did it, then maybe in 2023 he can do it. But I don't think you want to waste 2022 because you just can't waste these Embiid years. You just can't do it.
All right. Earlier today, I want to get your reaction to this. Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City, his must-win column is up at pressofatlanticcity.com. It's a really good one on the Sixers and the Phillies, which we will get to. Brian Windhorst said on ESPN that a trade is out there as a possibility, but it's not the priority of either side. He went on to say that Embiid is invested on working it out with Simmons, but he also mentioned Simmons switching hands to shoot with. Now, we've heard this a lot, but is that a preposterous notion to say that this gentleman is going to come in and all of a sudden be saved by shooting with his right hand?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. You tell me that we're going to now – he's going to switch from his right hand to his left hand or whatever he's going to do, and that's going to be his dominant hand, and that's going to solve all the problems. Again, here's my other point. And I've said this stat several times on the show before. Against Toronto in the fourth quarter, all those fourth quarters of the 7 games, he took 6 shots, went 4 for 6. Now, against Atlanta, he took 3 shots in the fourth quarter, went 3 for 3. He's had 3 years to improve. He hasn't improved. Now we're going to flip a switch. What I think is everybody's saying the right thing publicly. I think the Sixers support Ben Simmons, say good things about Ben Simmons. I think Joel Embiid says good things about Ben Simmons right up until the point they announce that Ben Simmons has been traded for such and such a player. I just think that's what we're going through right now. And again, you can't take a chance because – okay, Simmons could come out next year, and I don't care if he hits 53-pointers in the regular season and does all this, does all that. It's not till you get to the second game of the playoffs that you're going to know, and it's a great unknown. And again, you're wasting an Embiid season. Mike, you can't waste these seasons.
Mike, to me, and this is the thing, even if Ben Simmons came back, he averaged 23 points a game and 10 rebounds and 9 assists and had his best season. He's shooting 75% from the line. I don't think as a business, the Sixers, you would have apathy. You would have apathy towards the 82-game regular season, which you had apathy by the end of this season. You were like, I'll only believe it when they get to the playoffs. I don't care what's going on over these final 20 games because I'll only believe it. You can't go through a whole season like that. That, to me, is the bigger – like, I don't think the Sixers say, oh, he can't play or he can't help us win. I don't think that's secondary. I think this is more of a business of we can't have the apathy that the reason – I know people hate that process and that word – the reason they went through that is because apathy set in towards that organization that nobody cared about it.
I'd agree with that 110%. Let's just say the Sixers brought everybody back. Or let's just say they brought back Simmons and Embiid and tweaked around the edges. They wouldn't play a so-called, to use a word that you like, relevant or meaningful basketball game, in my mind, to game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals next year, because it would be show me then. I don't care what you do in the 82 regular season games.
And now you don't care what they do in the first round.
Right, exactly. So it's until you get to the second round of the 2022 Eastern Conference semifinals, that's when you can almost flip a switch and start paying attention. So contrary, if they did change it, if they brought in a new guy, then you'd say, hey, how is this guy working with Embiid? How does this look? How do they look there? So you run back Simmons and Embiid. Wake me up at the Game 1 Eastern Conference Semifinals 2022.
I agree. That's the one thing. To me, this is more of a business decision than it is a basketball decision. They can't have 41 games where you're apathetic in that building of, I don't really care. You can't say, hey, we're playing Charlotte on Tuesday night. Let's go. Don't care how many points Ben scores. I've seen this act before. So I think that's a bad thing. All right, must-win column. The Sixers part of it, what's happened on the Phillies? We talked the other day. They were winning 5-0. By the time you got off the phone, it was 5-5. By the time you got back to your seat, it was probably 9-5. They lost that game. Today they're changing the closer. This organization seems to be in a big pickle right now.
Yeah, it does. When you look at the roster, basically, it's just a sinking realization that this team might need to go through a rebuild again, which is hard for fans to hear. They haven't been in the playoffs since 2011. They kind of went through the rebuild in 15, 16, and 17, but it has just not produced the results that they wanted. And we've seen it now for 3.5 years with two managers, right? Two different managing styles, basically. And what is it? It's 34-37, which is, mediocre, around 500, and on the periphery of the playoff race. And I don't know how it gets any better, without, they don't have a farm system. That you take a look around the diamond for long-term answers. What's the long-term answer in left field? What's the long-term answer at shortstop? What's the long-term answer at center field? What about the Alec Boehm, Rhys Hoskins, first, third base DH conundrum? There's the back end of the rotation, the bullpen. This team, might need to take a step or two backwards to go forwards.
Woo, that is a pretty painful realization, and I agree. They can't. There is no move on this roster that can help them fix, as you mentioned, the farm systems league. There's not a guy that you can say, we could trade this outside of Bryce Harper, which you're not trading that contract, right? So they have a big problem with this Phillies organization, which they made a lot of moves today. They finally got rid of David Hale. They are now replacing the closer. I don't know that any of these things are going to change anything, but obviously this is a very big weekend with the Mets. They could be, 9 games out if they get swept here.
Right. It's 4 games up in New York, starting with a doubleheader today. And the moves they made today are window dressing. Okay, Jose Alvarado has thrown the ball, pretty well in June. But again, does anybody have faith that Jose Alvarado is going to be the long-term answer as closer? Right, exactly. So that's the sort of situation that they find themselves in. And Bryce Harper said it the other day. I mean, he got on the Zoom call after that game and said, we want to make Dave Dombrowski. He said the Phillies want to play well to make Dave Dombrowski, convince him to make some moves. And in the next sentence, he said, we got nobody in the minor leagues to trade. So I don't even know you're limited in the moves you can make. And meanwhile, you have holes. You have aging players at shortstop, left field. Gene Segura at second base long term. Who knows? A doable Herrera in center field. Who knows? The back end of the starting rotation. You don't have a 4th or 5th starter. And basically the big thing is your young players, your Moniacs, Cornelius Randolph, Adam Hazley, even Spencer Howard to a degree, Scott Kingery. None of those draft picks panned out, and it's why they're in the situation they are now. And I admit it stinks. No one wants to hear it on a bright, sunny, what do we call this, happy hour Friday? No one wants to hear that the Phillies might have to, take 2 steps backwards. But to me, and I'm not a rebuild guy. You know this. I'm not a trust the process guy. To me, it might be their best option.
Happy Hour Friday never seems so bleak after this conversation. Mike McGarry's must-win column appears Fridays in the Press of Atlantic City. And, enjoy your Coors, Miller, Bud, whatever light you're drinking.
All right, Mike. We'll see you down the road. I appreciate it.